And Wanda, if you'd like to introduce yourself, looks like we've got some participants joining us.
Looks like we do. So welcome everyone to our webinar, Latinx Veterans and Intersectionality. And so we're very excited to have some really wonderful people with us here today. And I'm going to introduce our moderators first, and then I'll introduce our panelists. So Rafael Martinez is an assistant professor of Southwest Borders in the School of Applied Sciences and Arts, where he teaches courses on American Southwest, Arizona history, and the U.S.-Mexican borderlands, and trans-border Chicano literature. So thank you, Rafael, so much for being one of our two moderators today.
Thank you.
Our second monitor, Vanessa Fonseca Chavez, is an associate dean of inclusion and student success in the College of Integrative Sciences and an associate professor of English in the School of Applied Sciences and Arts. She teaches courses on film in the American Southwest, indigenous literature, and Chicanx literature, and American ethnic literature. And so we have quite esteemed moderators with us today, and we're very, very happy to have them. And so next on the list are our wonderful esteemed panelists, Dr. Yolanda Rodriguez, Dr. Laura Key, and Dr. Pete Dimas. And I am Wanda Wright. I am the director for the Arizona Department of Veteran Services. I'm sorry, I am director for the Office of Veteran and Military Academic Engagement, and we are the hosts for this particular webinar. And again, I'm very excited, and I will hand the reins over to Vanessa and Rafael.
Mute button, yes. Hello, everyone. Thank you, Wanda, for that lovely introduction, and happy Hispanic Heritage Month. So we wanted to first thank the Office for Veteran and Military Academic Engagement for creating a space for us to have this conversation with our Latinx veterans, folks we know quite well in our community and who we respect very deeply. We're honored to have each of you here with us today to be in conversation. So I want to first start by having each of our panelists introduce themselves, and we'll turn it over to Dr. Yolanda Rodriguez to start us off. We would love to hear a little bit about your current job, the branch of the military that you were in, and a little bit about your time served in the military.
Okay, I am Dr. Yolanda Rodriguez. I am an instructor out of CISA Polytechnic campus. The main course I teach right now is, go figure, Death and Dying, which I absolutely love. I think it's a fantastic course, you know, even if I do say so myself. I am a Marine Corps veteran. I did serve active duty just shy of 7 years, and originally enlisted in 1985. Did quite a long amount of time, including a couple of deployments in the reserve side of the house, and was released in 2017. So quite a long tenure. I had a 12-year break of service while I went to medical school. I served you know, quite a number of places. I typically don't keep the list in my head, but anything from finance and accounting. And as I gained rank, then I became company gunnery sergeant to combat engineers and vault fielders.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Dr. Laura Key, would you like to continue? Dr. Key, your volume is acting a little bit wonky, the sound, so I don't know if there's something you can adjust there on your end.
Not hearing you, Laura.
All right, 1 second.
There you go.
Okay. Let's go ahead and go to Dr. Dimas, and then we can come back to Dr. Key in just a moment.
Okay, I'm Pete Dimas. I was born and raised in Phoenix. I joined the Navy Reserves on my 17th birthday, and served 2 tours in Westpac. That's the Navy term for going to Vietnam at that time. Unlike Yolanda, I wasn't cut out for long-term military. I only served 2 years and got out as soon as I could. I was thinking maybe I should become a cop, but I was a half inch too short. Maybe a fireman, same story. And I always wanted to be a history teacher, so I thought maybe I'd try that. And lucky for me, I got to say that because of what was going on in Vietnam, maybe there's a little guilt in the country. The GI Bill came forward, and I took it, and I did what you should not do. I got my bachelor's, my master's, and my PhD from the same institution, Arizona State University. And it took me a while, but I went through a number of different positions that helped me understand the society also. I was in private business. I was a vocational rehabilitation counselor. I was a coordinator of advisement at ASU. I was associate director of the math science program, and I got a phone call from Phoenix College in 1990 asking me if I wanted to teach. And I said, hell yes. And I went. And I was there for 20 years. And once I retired, I continued working on it. I'm working on a documentary that I called Arizona's Mexican Heritage and American Story. And I keep on getting people to ask different things. And in the process, I'm getting more material for the documentary. So it's working out pretty well.
Excellent. Thank you. And Dr. Key.
Hopefully you all can hear me now. Okay, perfect. Hi, I'm Dr. Laura Key. I am an assistant teaching professor at CISA. I teach a variety of classes, including Intro to Military Studies and representations of and self-representations of veterans and Mexican American history. I am a U.S. Air Force veteran. I served 6 years. I come from a very military background family with my uncle serving in World War II. I did not serve as long as Yolanda, only served 6 years, but my claim to fame, and it's not really a claim to fame, is I was a security policeman and I was deployed to the 1996 Olympics in Atlanta. And the place where the bomb went off was actually my station. So then started a 2 weeks of not eating, sleeping, or doing anything. And that's when I decided I should probably go back to school. I used my GI Bill and finished my bachelor's and master's degree.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And I'm going to pass it over to Dr. Martinez to start with our questions.
Hey, buenas tardes, everybody. Good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be here again, to be able to share space with these wonderful folks who we're going to be hearing from today. Again, thanks to the OBMEA office for hosting this event and putting this great panel together. So the first question we have for our panelists is, did you have family members or friends who were in the military? And if so, did their experience influence your decision to join? Whoever wants to get us started, feel free to jump in.
Like I mentioned, my family was very indebted to the military. I had 4 uncles that served in World War II. All joined after Pearl Harbor. I grew up with their stories, oral histories of what it was like to grow up in Depression era Las Vegas, and then join the military, where they were one of the few Mexican Americans in there. Met more on the way, and the discrimination that they felt after the military. My father served in the Korean War, and my other uncle was served in Korea after the war. So I had always figured that I would be in the military. Was planning to get my degree first, then going in, but life doesn't always happen how you plan it. So I'm very proud of my military service. I sometimes think maybe I should have stayed in, but I think what I gained from the military really helped me appreciate my relatives, appreciate the things that I have even more, and gave me a discipline that I don't think would have ever happened had I not joined the Air Force.
I guess I'll start
If
it.
you,
Oh, go
okay.
ahead, Yolanda. Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate that. My dad was in all of the 5 major battles of World War II in the Army, as were all my uncles, because back then in World War II, they would go and recruit neighborhoods. So the entire neighborhood went. He did experience a little bit of discrimination because he did want to go have a meal in a restaurant, wasn't allowed in. And then they did it, like bad boy army style, and said a few choice words, and definitely took over the place and sat down and said, as long as I'm wearing a United States Army uniform, I will be seated wherever I choose. And so, they kind of took that stand. I also had an uncle who is in the Marine Corps at the Chosin Reservoir, and any of you Marines out there know exactly what that means, part of the Frozen Chosin. And then among my siblings, I have 3 brothers that were in the Army in Vietnam, and 1 brother in Vietnam as well in the Marine Corps. And then after that, another brother went to the Army, and my brother-in-law. So it wasn't, as a female Latina, it wasn't my role to step into the military. My role was to stay home and take care of the family. But having 10 big brothers and most of them in the military, some of that stuff didn't stick. It didn't fit into how I was, living my days, half outside being a cowgirl and tying up cows and horses, and then the other half of the day cooking tortillas and, making food for the boys. So it wasn't expected, but I felt well prepared for it. Boot camp was hard, very, very difficult. As you know, Marine Corps boot camp is one of the biggest challenges people like to take. And because of the discipline that I had already from my family, I wouldn't say it was horrifically extremely hard, but it was hard boot camp. And then the rest, of course, that's the harder part, trying to keep your enlistment together. So that was my experience. Thank you.
Oh, I guess I'm left, huh? My dad was in the Army, World War II. I know he started out in the Air Corps, thought he was going to be a gunner. That's what he wanted to be, but they made him a cook. And he didn't have the math skills, the education process. And so he volunteered for infantry. They formed a new unit called the 106th Infantry Division. That was sent over to France and then to Germany. And he was put in very quiet part of the front there. It just sticking right into Germany. And they were hearing all this activity. The upper echelons were saying, no, it's just your imagination. Turned out to be the precise point of the German counter-offensive that began the Battle of the Bulge, which was the largest battle in American Army history. They were surrounded, got no, I found this out later. He didn't tell me this, but the Germans expected to get through there in just a matter of hours and hit Antwerp and basically cut the lines there. And they held them back for 3 days. And they were ordered to attack a bridge at Schönberg, Belgium, and capture it. But the German army was there, and they were being shelled with anti-aircraft guns. There's some stories. I interviewed some of his comrades. They told me some of the things that he did. He did get the Bronze Star and the Purple Heart. He was captured, sent to 3 prisoner of war camps. I recently found out that because the Russian army was coming in, they were close to the Polish border. They made in the middle of winter, a march from Eastern Germany to just south of Berlin. An interesting story he told me that some of the guards at the prisoner of war camp were Spaniards. He was standing there and he heard the Spanish, and they started talking. And right about the time of liberation, when the Russians were coming in, those Spanish guards helped him get to the Elbe River. And the interesting thing they told him was, we will be fighting together against the Russians. So obviously, these were the fascist elements of the Spanish Civil War, because there were quite a few Spaniards fighting on the Russian side. And yeah, he was in pretty bad shape when he got home. Later, when I became the trustee for my dad, I looked at all his medical records, and I didn't realize what he had been through. And I didn't realize that he had what they call PTSD. Is that what they call it? Yeah. I didn't know that stuff, but I did know we used to sit at home and watch World War II movies and combat and things like that. So it was a natural for me to go in. It was that time in my life when I got out of high school. I didn't have any money, and I knew I wanted to travel. I couldn't make up my mind whether it be the Marine Corps or the Navy, but I liked the Navy uniform better, and I wanted to see the world. And luckily, the Vietnam War didn't start until about 6 months after I enlisted. Yeah, I mean, I did see some combat, but it was nothing like what those guys saw on land. So luckily, I joined on my 17th birthday, and I guess we can discuss other things later.
Yeah, thank you all for those wonderful responses. And we wanted to start with family because, as you hear, that's the core of many of our stories, where our stories and storytelling comes from, our values, our systems, and things of that sort. So thank you for starting to paint a picture for us in terms of your own stories. I'm going to kick it back to my colega Vanessa, who's going to move us on the next question.
Yeah, definitely appreciate the long legacy of service. So much of what we learn, who to be and how to act, comes from our families. And so, Yolanda, I love the image of everyone in the community was kind of gathered to join the military. And so all of you joined because you had family who had already been in the military. But how did your family, friends, and community react when you decided to join?
All right, I'll start on this one again.
Yeah, you might as well go ahead and do it again, you know.
My dad was very proud he was in the Air Force. My dad is Anglo, however, and but my mom was not. I had my brother and my dad break the news to them because it was right during the Kosovo, was going on, and my mom was really not happy about me going. She had lived through, going to the mailbox every day looking for those telegrams for my uncles, and it was very much in her memory, and especially we tend to have these gendered stereotypes and understandings in a family, and this was just not appropriate for the only girl in the family. But once I was in, I was she came around a little bit more, and she's very proud that I had served. She was even happier, I guess, that I didn't see, I was not deployed in combat or anything like that. So but at first it was, I definitely had to tiptoe around her. She was definitely not happy.
Did you get the chancla?
No, but yeah, but I got the look. I know the look, right?
Yeah.
It was ugly, and it was silent treatment for a while. It was I couldn't wait to go to boot camp. I was thinking about yours, although the Air Force boot camp is completely different. But I was like, yeah, just put me on the bus, man. Just put me on the bus for 5 months. I'm good, So distance, which is funny, right? The distance and not being able to see or talk to me. Back then, when I was in, there was no like internet or anything, so it was like hand letters, so that gave her time to cool off and come around a little bit. My dad was, and they ended up coming to my graduation ceremony, which is a big deal for basic training and boot camp, right? And she was, that was like a culmination, that she was very just moved by the ceremony and everything. So it all worked out at the end. Good question on the chancla, though. So true.
I'm looking at Yolanda, but she's not saying anything. Okay. Actually, no one said too much to me. I knew my mother didn't want me to join. My dad never said anything. As a matter of fact, when I was 16 and I got a car and I was going around at night and coming, never said anything about that. And I come to find out that actually he started riding the rails, he and his brothers, when they were 15. So he figured if he didn't sign the papers, I would leave anyways right on my 18th birthday, because I did want to go. You know, that was my way to go and see the world. And at 17, in my 17th birthday, I joined with my friend Mike Dittis, whose mother I didn't know was an Ochoa, one of the people from Tucson who went up to Fort McDowell. And when they were removed from Fort McDowell, when the reservation was created, they moved into Scottsdale. So we both joined the same day. And I was still going to high school. And so I go to meetings and do my training basically every Tuesday night. And I went for a 2-week boot camp over Christmas time, and they assured us they would not cut our hair. I really liked my hair, you know. And I came back with no hair, and that was heartbreaking. You know, senior year. But that wasn't the first time they lied to me in the Navy. So, but my mother was not happy with me joining. She was not happy when I received orders in the middle of my service to go back overseas. And my dad looked at the tires on my car and he said, you know, he's safer over there than here. So it was, but I think it was expected that I would be doing that anyways. You know, I was raised to be an American, but proud to be a Chicano. And that's what they called themselves, by the way, my folks, my parents.
Wow.
It's not a new term by any means. And some people talk about the Chicano movement. It's the low and below. No, it was what people called each other, at least in New Mexico and in Phoenix. I don't know what they did in Patagonia and these other places, but that's how it was here. So, but yeah, that's how it was when I joined.
Well, thank you all.
I might add one more thing.
Go ahead.
I told you I wanted to go. I wanted to travel. And my graduation night, that's usually when you have all night parties. That night, I had to report aboard a ship to go on a 2-week cruise. I was going to go to sea finally. And I went to Portland for the Portland Rose Festival. And I'm glad I did. And I'll leave it at that.
Mine was pretty simple. I basically eloped. I was already out of the house. I'd left the house a little bit on the younger side, just a little bit older than 16. So my family didn't know that I was signing up for the Marine Corps. Basically, I just did it and went. And what was interesting, though, and is, you know, pretty common with a lot of people who do go to the military, I immediately found a new family. The girl that I went to boot camp with, Gracie Marin, And my recruiter, who never lied to me, I thought he was lying to me the entire time, but he never lied to me. Heath Westrup. I can forget other people's names, but I'll never forget theirs. Because they did become my family almost immediately. Once I you have to sign this little piece of paper where you're at and stuff. I sent that to home. And my mom and my dad did come down for my graduation along with my sister and my brother-in-law. They did come to my graduation from boot camp, which was a real big surprise. As far as I know, my mom had never left the state of Arizona and had to go all the way to South Carolina to see me graduate. But they basically didn't know. Nobody knew. I tend to just continue to move forward if I see something that needs to be done. And I find a way to do it and get it accomplished. So it was pretty quiet. Nobody had anything to say.
Hey, thank you all for continuing that conversation. And we definitely are seeing some questions come in from those who are attending the panel discussion today. So we're definitely seeing those questions. We will hopefully have some time for Q&A, but we'll also try to filter them into the questions that we have prepared already. And so the next question I was going to ask kind of correlates with some of the things that are being asked already. And I'm going to combine kind of question 3 and 4 that we had, which was really, you've already started talking about identity, right, in some levels. But if you could start thinking about how did your identity as a Latina, Latino, or Latinx person in the military, how was that shaped by being in the military and identifying in your own identity? And then also thinking about military personnel, who was the highest ranking person or other folks that you came across in your military service? So one of them is your own identity in the military, and then the other person is like how you interacted with other folks who are of similar identity in the military. Maybe we'll start with Yolanda this time, and then we'll move to Laura and Pete.
Sure. I'll start with the easier one, which is, basically who looked like me in the military, and who did I see as leadership in the military that looked like me. The highest ranking one that I recall was Master Sergeant Esquivel, and he was actually he was from Puerto Rico and the island itself. And so he was the highest ranking. I did not know any Latino or any other ethnicity except for Caucasian in the officer ranks. When I enlisted in, my first enlistment, and I guess for quite a while, actually, to be honest. And how did I feel as a Latina, Native American in the Marines? I was young, 18, 18-year-old, you're just leaving home. I was very, very homesick because back then, of course, there was no long distance. You paid for that. So you couldn't, nobody could afford to call home. And let me tell you, I could not find a tortilla to save my life in South Carolina. Nothing, no jalapenos, nothing that tasted like my own cultural foods. And that was really isolating. Extremely depressing. I had a lot of homesickness, and I don't think a lot of people address that, now, because it still goes on. You don't get your cultural foods, you don't get your cultural, sounds, and the neighborhoods that you go to, and you can get your pan de huevo or whatever it is that you're looking for. It's harder to find, in areas that you're not from. But as far as my experience, integrating into the service, it was, for the Marines, I don't know how it is for anybody else, but we definitely take that ethos of Semper Fidelis really, really tight. And the person on your left and the person on your right could be the person on your left and right that is saving your life, or you will be saving their lives in whatever situation that you're in. So it was never really a question of, oh, you're Latino native or anything like that. It was more like, hey, how do you say orange? Like, how do you say orange? And then that's how I learned so many different ways that you can call an orange, naranja, and I can't remember all the other Caribbean Spanish and Spaniard Spanish, Castilian Spanish, all the different languages to say one particular word. And we would have a lot of fun with that. We were in the Marines, we were all considered green, and that's it. They did have a little bit of designators back then, which they do not anymore. That has gone away in the long tenure that I had in the Marines. But before it was, you were either a light green Marine or a dark green Marine, and everybody was a Marine, and that's it. So it really, it was kind of like an equalizer. We really looked at rank. And I do know, Marines might be a little bit different than some of the other branches. And I hope I answered that question well. And if not, that's okay. That was my answer. Sticking to it.
You got a B+.
That was good, Yolanda.
Right. And I'm just going to have to rub it in. This is why the Air Force is far superior at boot camp, because we're only in San Antonio. So after I got out of boot camp and my tech school was also in San Antonio, I just walked down the street and be like, oh my God, thank God, food, non-military food, tortillas and, pan dulce and champurrado, right? So I guess that was the one benefit there of having all boot camp at the same place. I think I was next, so I'll just continue on to that of, I remember one Latinx person's staff sergeant, so an E5 was the only person that I think I hung around with, or even, knew that looked like me or sounded like me, and absolutely no stars or bars, right, at all. I never saw anybody. Again, I served a while ago, so, I'm hoping things have changed. I'm trying to think of, I was in a security policeman, so I was in a very heavily male-dominated profession in the military. I was one of 2 female airmen, and I was different from the other female airmen. And so I was, it was just different for me, and not just with race, ethnicity, and, history and everything. It was just a combination of everything. There was, when I was in Atlanta, in fact, and I was the only Latinx person in my flight in my area. I had to translate quite a few because we had so many Spanish speakers that would go up to the unit that we were attached to, and they would not speak English. So I would get called on my radio, and I would have to go blocks in horrible Olympic traffic. If you've never been to the Olympics, it was like nothing I've ever seen in my life. I mean, millions of people. It was insane. So I just walked, and my Spanish is not fantastic because my mom and my family were punished for speaking Spanish. So they did not teach me or my brother because they didn't want us to have an accent. And I had a really hard time picking up the language. You have that shame as a Mexican American who doesn't speak Spanish. I go, even today, I struggle mightily, may I add. But when I was in Atlanta and there was nobody else, my Spanish was really good compared to other people. So I think that brought me out. And I remember the police department that we were attached to. I was like, man, if you want a job here, come, because in the early 90s, they saw a migration and influx of Latinx people into the South. And they were really struggling with, community and language and everything like that. And that was the first time really that I was like, wow, maybe I am a little bit unique and provide something that other people can't. And I think that really started of like, I'm Mexican American, and like you were saying, Pete, my mom we were not allowed to use Chicano. Absolutely not. That I identify as Mexican American because my mom identified as Mexican American, and that's a whole generational issue and the time period that she went through, and that's a whole other discussion, but it just reminded me of that.
I'll tell you a little anecdote about the Chicano thing. I think my mother was in Mexicali, and She says, "Oh, cómo me gusta todos los Chicanos." I said, "No, no somos Chicanos, somos Mexicanos," you know. So just a sense of identity that you have. You know, when they were talking about during the Depression going down the road, when we saw Chicanos, we stopped. You know, that my experiences. I was born in La Maravilla area. It's on the southwest side of the city. And then when I was 3, I moved into an integrated neighborhood. I had white friends and black friends. It was almost like people would say like a middle class black area just right where I was living. So, and one of my best friends was Danny Ong. So I grew up going to school in a very integrated place, and I could see how I compared to everybody else as far as when I had to do my homework, which my dad said no C's. So had that. So I didn't have any issues when I went into the military. I always knew that when I wasn't looking, there were others that were saying some pretty bad things, you know, but I only got into a few things when you consider the environment. I know once a Marine, always a Marine. In the Navy, you got different divisions. It was mostly white. I didn't have any non-commissioned officers or officers that were Chicanos or Mexicanos or Latinos or whatever. I did have a few incidences when I was in there, even when I was in Iraq. But that was, you know, that was just a couple of times. And when I went places, you know, basically the Navy was pretty white when I was in the Navy. And this was in 66, 67, quite a while ago, huh? So, but basically, I didn't have an issue with dealing with other people. Of course, sometimes you have to take some stands about things, but on the whole, I didn't have any issues about race. Well, come to think of it, I was sent to machinist mate school in Chicago. Well, actually, Great Lakes, but it was Chicago. And by the way, I didn't know that there were a lot of Mexicanos in Chicago until I went there, and I could get some of the food. I know when I went to the Philippines, that was the only time I could get a taco, and it wasn't that good. But I went to Chicago, and I really didn't really have any real issues. I was when we were at sea, I was a sailor, and if I didn't get along with the guy in my other division, but he was on my ship, that's when we were brothers, you know. So you have these sorts of things going when you're in the service, okay, as a male.
So I think you already anticipated our next question. So I'm going to ask it, and then maybe if you wanted to add more, and then Dr. Key and Dr. Rodriguez certainly. So we're combining questions that we had and our audience have. So what were some of the challenges you experienced inside the military and after you served? And the audience would also like to know whether or not the top brass, so to speak, does enough for Latino folks who get discriminated against in the service. And I think Dr. Demas, if you want to just add to comments you've just shared, and because I think they probably go together.
Okay, so we start getting into other questions that you might have. No, not enough is done. And we're going to get into questions about people who serve. Maybe Rafael has interest in that, where those people who come in and join the service and looking for citizenship, and the disgusting situation where they're being deported for minor offenses when they put their life on the line. Latino service in the military, it's been going on forever. Every war, the Civil War, the Boxer War, the Spanish American War, World War I, World War II, always in there, and never really recognized, used, but never really recognized. In Arizona, as bad as things were for Mexicanos, their only real hero was born in Mexico, Sylvester Herrera, who was very American, but he also received the Primer on Mérito Militar, which is the highest medal for bravery in Mexico. And when I interviewed him, he says, I'm just as proud of this one. So he never lost his roots, but he was very, very American, you say. And when I was in Mexico in 1969, members of the band, they had dual citizenship because they had served in the American military. Yeah. But this is an issue. I know I'm stepping ahead, but it just, it irritates the hell out of me when I see what happens to these guys who serve this country, sent by chicken hawks, and then they're deported for some minor offense. It's just ludicrous. I don't know if I answered your question. I just took off on a tangent.
Dr. Key, would you like to respond?
I think it was how did relationship bonds with Latinos in the military? Was that the first part of the question there? Yeah. Okay. Again, I was very few in my flight and in my travels in the Air Force. So most of mine came out after, when I was a veteran, specifically when I started my PhD program, and I knew that I wanted to study Mexican American World War II veterans. Going to American Legion and VFW halls, the Mexican American, in Phoenix and here in Tucson. And in normal everyday language, hi, I'm a Mexican American veteran is not on the top of my introduction list, right? I mean, I don't even, for Veterans Day, I'll get my one free meal, right? And that'll be it, because I feel like my service was nothing compared to so many others. So I kind of downplay it, but I soon realized, and for good reason, like Pete says, right, that sometimes veterans, and especially sometimes people of color, Black American veterans and Mexican American veterans are a little hesitant to talk to people outside of what they know. So I learned very quickly that I walked in, or I'd introduce myself. Hi, I'm Laura Key. I'm a Mexican American veteran. My three uncles served in World War II. My four uncles served in World War II. One was by marriage. And I'm doing this project because I want to bring light your service and everything that happened to you and what you had experienced growing up in the Depression and in the military as being a Mexican American veteran. So most of my activism in my community, and when I worked at the Arizona Historical Society, is getting in touch with those Mexican American veterans, because just like with my uncles, just like with my other family, they really didn't think that they were special. And then when I want them to know that they were. And I always used Ken Burns' PBS World War II documentary, where he didn't include any Latinos, right? And I always start off with that, and I'm like, that's just not going to happen on my watch. So most of my identity, most of my ethos of being a veteran is reaching out to other Latinx veterans, and knowing that there are a lot of us and that we do count and what we do is special and stuff like that. So And then with the other question about is grass doing enough, you know, it's like every huge thing in everywhere, right? Nobody's done enough with, you know, sexism and sexual assault, and, you know, just the list goes on, right? I think you find they're just not being done enough, and I don't have any other answer. It's like Peter, just angers me beyond belief.
You know, I'd like to add something. Yeah. I did a short documentary. We did it on a little laptop computer. Well, when they weren't as powerful as they are now. And I did a little documentary, Los Veteranos of World War II. And I talked to Channel 8. And they said, well, we're not right now. And then that documentary, World War II that you were talking about, Ken Burns, you know, came out. And the Chicano veterans were outraged. You know? Now, I don't blame Ken Burns, because when you talk about American society, you have this myth, you know, this story that binds everybody together. And in his life, that story was never really introduced to him. You know?
Right.
But I got to tell you, as soon as the outrage came, I got a phone call. Can we please show your documentary?
Yeah. It's amazing how that works, right?
It's amazing how it works.
Yeah.
But yeah, I did it on Post 41. I guess you've been speaking to them, Laura?
Yeah, I haven't been since the pandemic, but yeah, right. When I was doing my initial doctoral research, they were the first ones that I went to.
Well, let me tell you a little bit about Post 41, so that people understand the power that they exerted. You know, and I think this is important. You know, when you talk about the GI Forum, you're talking about PhDs leading and providing in the leadership. In Phoenix, it was the Vatos from the Barrio that put it together. Because they could see who built the town and, you know, who was doing everything around. And the people were already involved, you know, because the Sonorenses were involved with all kinds of political maneuvering. They just couldn't get the vote to get the positions of, you know, elected officials. But there was Ray Martinez, became the coordinator of activities over at the Madison Street House. And you know how things were. You had the little audios here and there. Don't go into those audios, you know, if you're not from there. Especially don't talk to the girls there. You know? I don't know if I'm telling you something that you haven't heard before. But the thing was that on Saturday nights, they'd have dances over at the Madison Street Settlement House. And that was the only place, and Rudy Domenzine was telling me, is the only place where the Vatos from the calles, you know, the streets, and the Vatos from las avenidas, and the girls from those places, they could mingle and they can talk. In other words, they knew each other. This was before the war. And when they came back, they all had been through all that stuff, and they were not going to be treated the way they were treated before. And they formed this post. And when I started getting information, I looked on the organizational sheet. And right on that organizational sheet was my dad's name. And I didn't know that. You know, I'd been going to the post. I'm a member of Post 41. I mean, that's where my cousins had their wedding receptions and that sort of thing. But I didn't realize that coming together, taking their experiences, knowing they were right, they desegregated the city. They got rid of these real estate covenants. I know my dad was telling me about how in order to get mail delivered to the house, he went and collected petitions and they turned them in and they gave it to him. They became they became a power in the city so that people were going to them. And Barry Goldwater was involved in this. And one of the stories I got out of this, and I don't know how, and I'm pretty sure it's true, he was politically ambitious. He had a lot of Chicano friends, but he was afraid he couldn't get elected because the city would not elect Jews. And the thing was that post 41, everyone voted and the families voted. And, you know, so he was always a participant. And by the way, Barry used to go and maybe have a few more than he needed to over at post 41 for the longest time. So just thought I'd throw that out.
Thank you, Pete. Yolanda, did you want to respond as well?
Sure. As far as, you know, some of the how am I connecting currently now with my Latino veteran military community. I do a lot of work in the community with veterans right now. I work a lot with suicide awareness and suicidal ideation, and, you know, work pretty hard to save lives and provide a safe space for people who are in, you know, the proverbial hurt locker. That is something that I do quite a bit. And what I notice about the Latino communities is, you know, within the veteran community is we're a pretty tight little bunch. You know, we know each other, and we know, we know each other. And so it's like nothing to say, hey, man, you know, I see Rocky's there. Hey, Rocky, how's it going, man? You know, and I can reach out to Rocky, and I know he's in the middle of the US, and say, how's your community doing? And he can give me an update. So it's a whole different animal with the veteran community and the military community. And we do have these pods, Latinos, the natives, the African American, different cultures do come together and support each other. And as far as the other question, do I feel that the top brass does enough for any kind of issues that may come up for people of color or minority of any type? That is a very strong, clear no. Absolutely not. And there is, they're working. I know, again, I'm mostly going to speak from the Marine Corps side of the house because I'm involved in some of, Facebook groups, the staff NCO groups, and those types of things that are national organizations that we all chat with together. And I do know that we have these discussions behind the scenes all the time. We have these discussions all the time. Well, what can we do to make this better? How can we change these things? So there is a constant grassroots movement happening in among the ranks, and they push it forward, push it forward, push it forward. And a lot of times there's repercussions for someone speaking up against or out against or trying to make changes to current policies, and it could be detrimental to one's career. So there are a lot of people that do speak up, but then end up getting pushed out, shut out, and maybe they have 12 years of service and they opened their mouth. And guess what? Now they only have 12 years and 1 month of service, and they don't have the opportunity to re-enlist or move forward, and may have lost some rank and privilege. So, here I am, as we say, sitting under my DD 214 blanket. I can say this nice and loud, it's like, no, absolutely not. Am I abhorred at it? Yes. Am I angered at it? Absolutely. Because then what happens? Me, myself, and my other peers that have no rank, no backing, no financial help, we're doing the grassroots movements. We're the ones picking up the veterans up off the ground, our, veteran brothers arm in arm, and getting them back on their feet again and helping them. Do the top brass do that? No, they're worried about people opening their mouths like myself. So anyway, I'll close my mouth again behind my DD 214 blanket, And I hope I answered that question for you.
Yeah, thank you all again for those wonderful contributions. And so we have a little bit under 5 minutes. So what I think we're going to do is the last question I have for you, maybe if you could think of a few sentences or just a few ideas to wrap up with. We want to end with bringing it back to ASU. So do you have any thoughts on what can ASU do as higher education institution to support not only veteran students, but also faculty and staff who might have served? So if you have a few sentences or a few ideas on that question, feel free to jump in to close us off.
I've been away from ASU for a little while, so I can't really speak to that. What I will say is that I think the faculty needs to be further diversified because the population will change. But I think it's criminal the way higher education is funded today. People think I'm crazy, but I didn't pay tuition when I started school. It was different. And it changed. I got to say, people won't like it, but it started with Reagan. He started pushing it down in California, spread nationwide. So I couldn't believe it when I took a look at the Phoenix College catalog for this year and found out that they're charging $97 an hour. My God, I thought it was outrageous. I had to pay $35 for books when I started. And when I went to ASU, it was $95. It's criminal. It's criminal. That's all I can say at this point. Luckily, I had the GI Bill, by the way.
I'll send out a quick little hello to Michelle. Anyway, yes, we have fans in our veteran community and we hold on to each other all the time. I will say that I do think that ASU is making strides and it's visible now. And I love to see that we're speaking out more and, the people in the room here are out there more and not afraid to speak up and show up. And, I was criticized once for always calling myself Dr. Yolanda, but there's a reason for that. It's not out of arrogance. It's not out of bragging. It's not, hey, look how important I am. I'm educated. It's not that at all. It's more about representation and not being afraid to walk into the room and say, hey, my name is Dr. Yolanda, Dr. Rodriguez to some people, Dr. Yolanda to most people, and a very, very, very select few Yolanda. But I do see ASU moving forward, and I'm excited about that. And I'm hoping a lot more people will get involved and not be afraid to show their cultural pride, whatever culture it happens to be, respectfully. And we can all be respectfully within our own cultural selves and move forward together and just make everything better for everybody. Sunshine, flowers dancing, the whole bit. It's really possible if you just stand in your, cultural truth and just feel comfortable in your skin.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm obviously the newcomer to ASU, but I mean, just me being hired, me being a Latinx veteran, me being, associated with the military and veterans education program. I mean, that's like, I would have loved this when I had first gotten out of the military. I can't imagine, that it would have made my transition from military life to back to school, civilian life so much easier, right? I think being visible, just like Yolanda says, right? Seeing that ASU is taking seriously military veteran issues, right, and classes and to help them, and for people that to be taught by somebody that knows kind of where they came from and what they did, and I also look that, maybe I don't have a lot of Latinx students at first, right? This is part of my thing of growing that, but also of showing other people of what a Latinx veteran, that they may have overlooked, someone from me, right? Showing it to other people, like I was there with you, I look different also, right? This has been my experience. I'm a non-traditional student, right? I went, back to school after many years after the military and served in the military. So I was older when I went back to school, and a lot of the veterans that we see coming back to school, right, and especially I think of Latinx veterans, right, coming back to school after family obligations and everything. And I think being visible and reaching out to those people. And again, I don't, usually start every conversation with, "Hi, I'm Dr. Laura Key. I'm a Mexican American veteran," but I do start off my classes that way, right? Because I want them to know, not only have somebody in here that sounds like we came from similar things. I want to show the people that maybe never have really thought about it before, that there is another side to the military and to the veteran side. There are people that you may have not noticed or overlooked. So I think it's twofold. So I'm extremely proud to be in this program. I am extremely honored to be able to share my story and to teach people like me and that have had similar experiences, and then just be a representative. So I'm very lucky, and I hope that this program keeps continuing and does programs like this. When I even first started grad school, this program I couldn't have even thought of it, but now look at where we are. So, okay, I could ramble forever, so I'll just stop right there.
I think we all can.
Yeah.
Great. I think Colonel Wright's going to have the last word, but I just wanted to say thank you so much. I think part of what is really exciting about this particular panel is we have very Arizona-centered experiences as Latinos. And just before we opened the webinar, we were talking about the void of research and experiences and scholarship that is produced about Arizona's Latinx population. And so I'm already trying to get Rafael to write an article out of this. We haven't talked about it yet, but I'm saying it right now. I'm putting it out there. But it's such a pleasure, because I think we all know you in different capacities, and it's just so wonderful to have been able to invite you all and have you participate this evening. So I'm going to turn it over to Colonel Wright to close us out.
Thank you so much, Vanessa. The questions from the audience were fabulous. I mean, I know we created our own, but they were really good. And I hope that the audience was able to take from this what I hope that we gave to it. We really want people to understand what it is like to be Latinx and a veteran, and really what that means to the culture. And so I just want to thank Vanessa and Rafael again for being our moderators. And then, of course, our beautiful panelists that represents errors and genders, and it's just great. So thank you, Pete and Yolanda and Laura, for giving us your wisdom and your insight and your experience as being a veteran and being Latin. Thank you all so much.
Thank you. I'm honored. Thank you so much.
Have a great evening.
Okay, hey, we're over 2 minutes, huh?
We
Bye-bye.
could
Thank you all.
probably do another hour, and we'd probably be good with all the good
Seriously.
questions easily.
Yeah,
Thank you so much. We really appreciate it.
Oh, that was so fabulous, you guys. Oh,
It's
I
so
learned
fun.
a lot.
There was a question we didn't get to ask, but I'm really wanting to know the answer, because somebody asked, what is one memento or thing that you carried with you when you went into service, or something that reminds you of this service?
From our culture, right? The
Yeah.
question was, what cultural item did we bring with us? Mine's easy. Do you know what a sombrero is? It's a pot that's almost like a chalice shaped pot, but it's where you burn your medicine and you burn your prayers in. So I took that with me, and I've had that same pot with me, and it's sitting there on my altar. I can see it. I've been carrying that around with me since I was 16, and I took that with me. Of course, I had to store it while I was in boot camp, but then because you don't even get a toothbrush that's not military issued in Marine Corps boot camp. Yes, but that's what I carried. I carried that with me everywhere.
I brought with me to boot camp from my mom, so she talked to me long enough for that, for a St. Michael and St. Christopher medal that I kept. We weren't allowed to have jewelry, like you were allowed wedding rings and a post or anything, for that. But I had that instead of my crucifix. And they were gonna make me take it off, and I told them it was religious, and they were like, because man, they didn't know these, they had no idea. So they let me keep them on. I put it on my necklace and kept that throughout my entire military service. And as for any mementos, I still have my badge. That was kind of important.
Me, I just guess I just took my soul, what my dad had given me, and I was looking for adventure, and it's a special period in my life. And you know, I do have a memento.
Oh, there we go.
One of the ships I was on. So that's about it.
Well, thank you for that. That was yeah, we're always thinking about how we're carrying culture with us. I love, Yolanda, that you've carried something for, you know, your entire, since you were 16.
I would have lost it, you know.
Oh God, yes. Oh, for sure.
It's a prayer pot. I better not lose it. I'm scared if I
Yeah.
break it, what's gonna happen? Oh, I'm gonna go, you know where.
Right.
Okay.
And you do see I wear my medicine pouch almost everywhere I go too. You know, I do wear a medicine pouch.
Oh, I'm done asking questions, so I won't keep y'all over anymore.
Well, this was fun. Thank you all for organizing this. This was, I really, I mean that when I was like, I would have killed for this when I was in, you know, in school, anytime in school. Hell, I didn't even get like Mexican American studies when I was in, you know, high school or my bachelor's.
Oh,
So,
no. When I taught
Yeah.
that's what the students were saying.
yeah, I got
Wait
nothing.
till here.
It was not until I got my master's program. I'm like, I'm sorry, there's courses on Mexican American studies. And again, I grew up in a very, you know, Hispanic area, right? Las Vegas is heavily Mexican and nothing. Yeah, so I would have killed for this, and especially when I got out of the military, I would have just loved something like this to connect with other people, with other veterans and stuff. The only thing I had was the VA registrar at the school that was mean, right? And would tell me I didn't fill out my forms right, and we're not paying for your books. You know, that was my only interaction. So it was a good experience because now I know how to treat my students, right? I'm like, I will never be like that person, right? So I guess it was all a learning experience. But anyways, thank you all for inviting me and putting this on. I appreciate it. It was
You're
awesome.
welcome. Laura, I really appreciate your comments because we hope for the best when we do these things, right? I think this one was a big hit.
Yeah.
And we'll do one more this semester and 2 more next semester. And so if you guys have any ideas for Veteran Voices, please send them our way. And we will try to make sure they're all as great as this one was.
Yes, because we're always trying to, it's called Veterans Voices for a reason. Like we literally want to hear other experiences of, you know, other than our own. You know, we all experienced a different military. You know, we all have that commonality, but it was different for every one of us. So if you have book ideas, you know, anybody that you'd like to support and have us bring, please reach out. We really want to honor that. So yes, please.
Sounds
That would
good.
be really good. The LinkedIn post, I just posted it up. Like, you know, like, I don't know, while I was wondering if I was in the right room. Started chilling, you know. I posted it up on LinkedIn, and Rocky Morales, he popped up, and he's actually out of Indiana, and he has a business in New Mexico, and he does business in Arizona too. He's you know, he's an entrepreneur, economic developer for the Native American communities. So that was a really big person to have in the room as a part of our audience.
That's amazing. Thank you. Thank you for that.
Mhm.
And Rocky,
All right.
I think you're still in the room, so thank you for coming.
Oh, Rocky, there he is. Yeah.
Oh, he raised his hand, so I don't know how to let
Oh,
him
you've got
speak.
something to say. Yay.
I don't know if we can let him speak. He can type it in the Q&A, I think is. Oh, there he is.
There he is.
Okay.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hey, I
Yes.
appreciate this. This is great. I am from Indiana, and I'm actually working in Omaha. And Yolanda's right, I do a lot of business around Indian country across the United States. But it's great to see this. I just literally at like a quarter after saw it, and I just said, "Whoa, Yolanda, let me support." That's exactly what she said. I just like we support each other. It's like an automatic muscle reflex. You know, we talk about muscle memory when the things we do and train, and it was like, yep, got to do it. So I just signed on, and I appreciate this and the listening to the stories from everyone. It really enriches my experience as well. So thank you guys.
Thanks, Rocky.
Bet.
All right. Well, thank you so much. Is there any, I mean, I'll sit and talk however anybody else wants to. So
Yeah, I'm curious about how the VA works now, the GI Bill, because when I went through, it was like the World War II situation. You got it, you go to school, and they paid you. Yeah, how was it now?
Basically the
post
same.
9/11 is a little, yeah, it's pretty much the
Yeah,
same.
basically the same.
We had, I think it was Montgomery GI Bill when I was in. I served in the early 90s, and now they had the post
Forever bill.
9/11.
Yes, forever GI Bill now.
Yeah.
So the 9/11 is one iteration behind, and so the forever lasts forever, whereas the other one's timed out.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And of course, they had the 9/11, which you could allow your dependents and spouse to partake in your education and benefits.
Oh,
So it's really expanded, and I think, doing things like this, right, it helps people get an understanding of what veterans need. And one of them was that we're living our lives. We don't necessarily have time to get the degree today.
right.
And we have 5 years to do it. We want to have a career, and then we want to go to school. So I think that was a very good expansion of the GI Bill.
Yeah.
Well, so the GI Bill does not pay for tuition.
It does.
It does. Yes. Yeah. It pays for the tuition, and they get a housing allowance. So they get their tuition paid and if they're 100%. It depends on how much. If they're 70%, like what their time served was. So if they didn't serve like their full amount or whatever, then they'll only be like 60% or 70%. And so that's the
Are
only
you
amount
talking
they
about
get.
time in service or?
Yes,
Yes.
time and service.
Yeah.
Yes. And then so then they get their tuition covered, they get a book allowance each year, and then they also get a BAH, which is the base housing. So they get a housing allowance.
Oh, wow, it's like a
I'm pretty
fellowship.
sure I didn't get BAH. I am almost
Yeah.
positive. I didn't.
Yeah, they got
Montgomery GI Bill one too. So
yeah. So and they also, we're actually, the next Veterans Voices we're doing on November 30th is on GI Bill benefits and extending them and how to
Oh, that's
stretch
important.
them. Yeah, so we're going to talk to somebody that works at the VA who he's the Vet Success Campus guy, Troy Rundle. He's going to talk, and then we're going to talk to a person who's a Chapter 31, which is the VOC Rehab. Used to be VOC Rehab, now it's called Veteran Readiness, where it doesn't even touch your GI Bill benefits. It's a different process.
Right, I was a VOC Rehab counselor myself.
Yeah. So,
but I can see the difference between a voluntary service and a draft where you had no choice. So
so that's our next discussion, because a lot of people, they may want to go to grad school. They may like they share, they can split their benefits, and some kid, their kids can get a little bit. There's a lot of different things. They have Chapter 35, which if somebody's 100% disabled, their spouse and their children can go to school for free. So Chapter 35 is different. They don't actually, it doesn't pay tuition, but they get like a stipend sent to them. So there's like 4 or 5 different ones. And of course, if you're active duty, they have tuition assistance. So before landing this job, before I got into this, I was a SCO, which is a school certifying official. So I processed benefits. So I know a little bit about that world. It's a huge world. There's so many different layers to it, because people are still using their Chapter 30, which is the Montgomery GI Bill. They're doing the post 9/11. So there's all these different kinds of benefits, and it's just that could be like a 10-hour.
Yeah, I'd have to take a course to know what you've done.
Yeah, so
right.
I'll send you.
I think that would be great to learn more about that.
Yeah, I'll send you the invite to the next one if you guys want to come to the one in November, because it's going to be just like this, and we're just going to be chatting about like benefits. And the guy, Troy Rundle, he is an encyclopedia. He knows everything. He's been there for 13 years with the VA, and this is all he does is get benefits for people.
Well, the GI Bill changed my life.
Yeah, it changes everyone's lives. I think that's one of the, I think if you ask most people what was, besides generational, which I'm generational, you know, I had my dad served, my uncles, you know, all that stuff served. But I think one of the number one reasons, especially because I think they go for people in those socioeconomic, you know, neighborhoods, you know, they go for people that need that wouldn't be able to go to college without that. And I think that I think that's their biggest recruiting tool, honestly, is free education. So you know, and not everybody gets it, you know, like not everybody stays in long enough, or something happens in service and they don't get their benefits. And I didn't have benefits, and so I have student loans. And so my part of the conversation that I'm going to have on November 30th is, what do you do alternatively if you don't get your GI Bill benefits and you end up with student loans? So I'm going to talk about my.
You're sinking
thing.
into the thing that really got to me.
Yeah,
it's outrageous.
Yeah, no, I'm very far in debt, but I work at a state institution, and I'm smart enough to do the PSLF, which is the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program. So, you know, there's things out there, and I don't think that people are educated enough in that. And so that's why we're going to do this Veterans Voices, because I want people to have information that I didn't have. So,
well, I learned a lot. It's too late for me. Yeah.
I already used mine. I'm done. And I'm not going back to school. Those people that go get a law degree after their PhD, and I'm like, no, seriously, you need to be committed to some kind of mental health institution, because there's no way I'm going back to school. Anyways, I gotta feed my mom, so I'm gonna head out.
Okay, well, thank you so much, everyone. I really appreciate it.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
I appreciate it. Take care.
Bye.